Hey again, everyone. So we're back, and we are thinking in Module 1.2 about types of research. And so what I'd like to do is play a little game with you and just ask you to just think about whether or not you agree with these statements. The first sort of statement here is a research project in which a student wants to know, or a group of students want to know, if the food available at True Grits, you may remember that it's a dining hall on the physical campus of UMBC. Maybe some of you have never been there, but it's a place where you get to eat food, right? They want to know if this food is more or less nutritious than the food available at the Commons. And so you might be asking yourself, is this research? Well, the answer is yes. This is a form of research called empirical research, which means that we're able to use observable data to study it. And so this has nothing to do with politics, so it's not acceptable for our purposes for this course. But certainly, we could imagine, and this is the kind of thing I want you to get a habit of doing, right? We could imagine designing a study where we'd be able to observe whether the food available at True Grits is more or less nutritious than the food available at the Commons. And so if you need to, pause the slide, but think about, how could I do that? And how could I determine the nutritional value of these different foods? And certainly, I'm sure that there's a few ways that you could imagine doing that, and you could compare them. It's a simple comparison. That's very much in the spirit of what we're trying to do in this class. Another example. A group of students is curious about the relationship between the time of day of a course and attendance rates. And believe me, as a professor, having taught courses in the early morning and late in the evening, I believe that there is probably a relationship here, right? Is this research? This is absolutely a kind of research, and that's what we might call pure research. It studies a phenomenon simply for the purposes of personal or scholarly edification. So this is not, to prescribe any kind of policy change, right? It's simply to understand the phenomenon. That's another, I think, important element of research. And again, as you're thinking about the idea that this is a type of research known as pure research, specifically because it is studying this phenomenon in this way, again, pause the slide. Think about how you could do this, right? How could you actually do a study like this? What kind of data would you have to collect? What would be your hunch about the way the world works? Right? What's your theory about how time of day of a course and attendance rates are related? It might be a pretty straightforward theory at the end of the day, right? But you want to link together in your mind an explanation, tell a long-form story as to why you think some courses are going to be sparsely attended and some courses are going to be well attended based on the time of day. So again, this is pure research, but with each of these examples, I want you to think about how, going back to Module 1.1, preview the steps involved. How could a researcher study this stuff? And if they're doing pure research, this seems like a really great way to ascertain a good understanding of this relationship. How about this one? A group of students wants to know if the debut of a new stadium causes a long-term increase in attendance at basketball games. Okay, so is this research? This is absolutely a form of research. It's called causal research. And so this research is looking at the effect of an intervention on actual outcomes. Now, how could we study this one? This is, why maybe a good example of why causal research is quite difficult. Because in order to do this and to actually measure this in real life, we would have to produce a new basketball stadium, right? And compare attendance at a previous stadium to attendance at the new stadium. And so if no such stadium exists, we'd have to go and build one. And that's why causal research is in some cases impossible in certain respects. Like, for example, if I wanted to know, what if we replaced, the senators from Maryland with like 2 cats, right? What would be the effects on the roll call vote? What would be the effects on the voting behavior in the Senate if we replaced our 2 senators with 2 cats? I don't think that, the Constitution is silent on whether or not cats can serve in the Senate, but I don't think it's going to be very easy for us to actually see the causal effects of that question, right? Because replacing our senators with cats, it would not happen, right? We would not be able to do that. And so because that's an impossibility, we can't know the effects because we can't measure them. So again, in this case, we actually could measure it because lo and behold, UMBC did get a new basketball stadium just a couple of years ago. And so we might be able to actually measure the pre and post attendance rates on those before and after that effect. So this is causal research. But again, the bigger point here, in addition to introducing these types of research, is for you to think about what ways we could actually sort of think about doing the research itself. So how could we actually make this research happen? In this case, we could observe, right, the before and after attendance rates before and after the stadium was built. Although there's a caveat, right, and this is why research is hard, that attendance goes straight to zero during COVID. So we might have a little bit of a confounding variable in our study. All right, how about this? A group of students wants to help other students find parking faster. And so they develop a campus-specific app and then test its effects on parking satisfaction. Now, is this research? It is also a form of research, but again, I want to clarify the distinction between this form of research and the form of research that we saw earlier called pure research. Okay, this is applied research. It's different from pure research because it's specifically designed to solve a problem. Okay, the previous one, I just wanted to understand the patterns. I didn't have any prognostications about what we should or shouldn't do. I didn't have any kind of, like axe to grind. In this case, these students have a clear policy goal in mind. They want to help other students obtain a goal, right? So they developed this app and they want to know, does the app help people find parking? Gosh, wouldn't it be great? Once we get back to campus, parking is always hard to come by. Wouldn't it be great to have an app like this? And so this applied research is trying to solve a problem in a community using a scientific design. So again, back to that foundational question, could we do this, right? Could we do this research? Yeah. If we had the app, if we made the app, we could test its effects on parking satisfaction by conducting a survey perhaps before we roll out the app, then conducting a survey of people who have the app and see if the same survey, see if it increases people's positivity towards their parking experience. That would be a very useful research design for this, and it would help us solve our applied research question. How about this one? A group of students wants to know what kinds of birds visit UMBC's campuses research. Well, as it turns out, yes, this is also a form of research. This is called descriptive research. And again, think about the difference between this kind of research where they really want to help students figure out how to do a thing, right? How to increase their satisfaction. This descriptive research is just about what are the birds? It's not about do the birds do X, right? What's the relationship between the birds and something else? It's just about the birds. All they want to know is what birds are there? And so these descriptive research questions ask what questions. They just try to lay the groundwork for our broader understanding by helping us to figure out what is, right? Not what's the relationship between, what's the effect on, does X lead to Y, does Y lead to X? It's just about the thing itself. So descriptive research is quite different from pretty much all of the research questions that we are going to be contending with in our course. But it's important to also recognize that this is a form of research as well. Finally, we can think about another form of research, which is a little bit afield of what we're going to be doing in our specific course. So the example here is a group of students wants to know whether student government is organized in a way that enhances fairness and egalitarian ideals. And so you can see that this research is a little bit different, right? Because it is what we might call normative in that it makes value claims about what ought to be. And so usually normative research is going to be a lot more philosophical in nature. It's going to make claims about things that are much more difficult for us to arrive at non-contested definitions of certain concepts. It's something where it's more about engaging in research that seeks to ask and answer questions for which there's no sort of single single definitional principle. So again, like you'll see a lot of this in philosophy and other kinds of scholarly literatures, other than what we might call more mainstream empirical research. Nevertheless, normative research is also a form of research. So a little bit further afield from what we're doing in this class, but valuable as well. So just to summarize what we've gone through, right? We've gone through several different examples that speak to different kinds of research, right? In this class, we're going to be doing mainstream political science research, which is what we might call empirical, pure, and causal. That is absolutely not to say that other forms of research that follow some of these, like normative research, the descriptive research, applied research, this stuff is all over the place in political science. It's very popular. It's being used widely, and many scholars are adding to our overall volume of knowledge in the field using those approaches. But for the purposes of simplicity and for the purposes of really making sure that we develop questions that we can easily ask and answer in the frame of one semester, we're going to be doing empirical, pure causal research. And so that means we're going to be asking questions about how one thing causes variation in another thing, using measurable and collectible data for the purposes of scholarly edification. So that just simply to understand a phenomenon, not so much to make a prescription or a value judgment that will influence outcomes in the future. We as scholars are simply trying to unveil what is and the relationships between different political phenomena in order to better understand the world around us. So as you go through this first module, as we work this week and next week about identifying topics for our research, I want you to remember, keep this in the back of your mind, right? Be asking these questions over and over. Is this what we might consider to be an empirical question? Is this a question where we can use data to develop a research design that we can answer it easily? Is this pure research, or is this research with sort of an agenda behind it, right? Or am I simply interested in this for scholarly edification? And critically, is this causal research, by which I mean it needs to be something that goes beyond descriptive. Is this research for which we can understand that there is one thing that is having an effect on another thing? Because what we're interested in measuring in this course is the effect, and not so much just the what. Right? We want to know how one thing affects the other and not just the thing itself. So if all of this is really confusing to you so far, don't worry. All will be made clear in our first meeting and the second meeting as we look through a huge volume of topics that previous researchers have investigated in the past. And again, as we try to build this airplane at 30,000 feet while we're in the air and put it all together at once, I think that more exposure to the kinds of questions that other political scientists have asked in the past will allow you to really get a feel for what sort of goes in this set of questions. So again, be thinking about this. Take a look at chapter 1 as soon as you get the textbook. It's okay if you don't get it until next week, but certainly soon we'll be able to arrive at hopefully a list of topics that will allow you to start digging in and thinking carefully about how you might go through that research process throughout the semester. So long, and again, I look forward to our meeting on Thursday.